what are the different types of stress and how do you recognize them in yourself as well as your friends and family so that you can help them out more? Now, this is something as a bit of reflection from that mental health first aid course that I was recently on. And rather than talking about the stress responses, this is more talking about the different types of it. Starting off with the easy three categories, you have distressed, you have de-stress, and then you have eustress. Now, if you're distressed, that is when you're in a situation of almost panic where you don't necessarily know how you're going to cope with it. Someone who's visibly distressed is going to be doing some form of stress response in whichever form of capacity that is, and generally trying to cope with that situation. Whereas eustress is something that is generally a positive stress. When you hear people say they thrive under pressure, that type of environment, now that can become a more problematic stress if left to persist in that way, or it gets persistently added to. However, eustress can be a positive type of stress. And then you have de-stress, which is your ways of coping with stress and ways of unwinding. Going to the gym, cooking, which is my personal de-stress. But generally speaking, these are different ways that you can understand what stress is and how you can understand coping. Now, some of the other types of stress, particularly those that come under the category of being distressed, and as a result, what causes people to sometimes feel that extra pressure is an acute stress. Now, an acute stress is generally speaking quite a brief occurrence. It can sometimes happen as a one off, or it can become persistent, which I'll talk about in a second. But that one off occurrence can be something that where you're in that situation, you feel overwhelmed and you just don't know how you're going to deal with it. And then you get your stress response as a result of that. And that's where those five F's come in. Then you have your episodic acute stress. Now, this is where you start to notice a pattern. If you have a same occurrence that's causing this time after time after time, this can be examples such as at the start of the week when you know you're going to get a to-do list from your boss and that causes you a level of episodic stress and your stress levels go up at that particular point. Can be other occurrences as well, but you need to be able to acknowledge what that type of stress is and how you see that within yourself as well as other people, and try to acknowledge, particularly if you're in a position where you can help out your team, because this is harder for them to acknowledge themselves. Then you have chronic stress. This is more persistent. This is generally speaking harder to notice initially in people because you might start to notice a more gradual change in their behavior, and it's because of a persistent challenge that they're having with this type of stress. And then when you have the recovery period, particularly after a traumatic event, this is where you have PTSD or post traumatic stress disorder, where the individual might be recovering from it. Now, I will go through a follow up video to this about de stressing and how to unwind and common recommended methods that mental health first aiders have in our toolbox to effectively help people out with that you can potentially help yourself out with or potentially look for further guidance on. Now, if you want to know more, then please drop a comment below and like and follow for more.